Welcome one, welcome all, welcome to the very first exciting edition of Alpha Bootcamp, where we discuss the very basic information about what we know of Star Citizen. I'm Bridger, and today we're going to discuss the customization of your ship and general ship capabilities. This series was designed as a companion to the Tales of Citizens podcasts. We lay out the groundwork here in the Alpha Bootcamp so that we can discuss the subject in detail on the podcast. We recommend watching or listening to the Alpha Bootcamp number 1 before listening to Tales of Citizens number 1, and so on with all the following episodes. Let's get on with the information, shall we? There will be a variety of ship types in Star Citizen, as well as a variety of roles. You might have small single-seat fighters all the way to large capital ships with dozens of crew manning the command and control stations and the weapons. Now, ship roles can include things like mining, trade and transport, fighting, of course, or perhaps salvaging and exploration. Some ships will be better at these things than others. A ship designed specifically for dogfighting might be really good at toughing it out in a fight, but it's not going to be very good at exploring or salvaging, whereas a ship that's specifically made for mining probably won't do very well in a fight. And then there, of course, will be jack of all trades somewhere in between that aren't really good at any one thing, but they can be fairly good at multiple roles. Let's talk briefly about the components of your ship, which can be customized. It all starts with your hull. Now, this is the main ship type. Are you going to get a Freelancer, a Constellation, an Aurora, etc.? This determines roughly what kinds of roles the ship is going to be good at. The Hornet is good at dogfighting. It's not good at carrying cargo. It's just the way the hull is designed, so it's going to limit you when you're flying that specific ship. There are also hard points, and these are one of the main things that determine the types of weaponry and gear that you can have equipped to the external parts of your ship. A Class 1 hard point is for fixed forward-facing guns. These will always shoot directly in front of you where the crosshair's pointing. They don't get to turn or move or anything. Class 2 hard points are articulated weapons that are also pointed forward, but they can be slightly pivoted, and that means that you can have more accuracy and more precision because you don't have to shoot exactly where your ship is pointing. You're going to have a small cone in front of you where your ship can actually aim these targets slightly independently of the hull. This allows for much more precise aiming, but comes at the cost of a smaller weapon size. Class 3 hard points are known as Pylons, and they mount things like missiles, electronic countermeasures, extra sensor pods, drop tanks, tractor beams, all kinds of things that are not made guns but are mounted to the sides of your ship. Finally, we have the Class 4 turret, which is a manned turret, and this allows a second person or player or NPC within your ship to jump in that turret and have complete control of that one weapon. Now, there are more hardpoint types than this, and you can reference the articles in the description if you want to read up about them. Most of them are mainly for capital ships. And above and beyond all that, you can have things like extra batteries, backup systems, ammo racks, extra cooling systems, but it all takes up very valuable space. So let's get right to that. Things that you need to consider when you're customizing your ship. One of the first things you might consider are your hardpoints. If you have a couple of Class 1 turret slots and a Class 3 pylon slot, well, that gives you very limited range of options, and you can figure that out first. Next, you might take a look at your power requirements. You just put a bunch of guns on your ship. How much power is it going to take to use them? After that, look at the space you have left. Each ship has a certain amount of internal space where you can put things like your power plants and your shield generators and other things like that, so space is very important. Next up is cooling. Now that you've put some systems on your ship, you have to take a look. How much heat are they going to produce when you're actually in combat? And there'll be test facilities you can use to sort of test all these things out, and so you might add some extra cooling systems above and beyond what is baked into the hull. Another thing to consider, your signature size. If you want to be sort of a stealth ship, you might look for parts that specifically have lower signature output. Now, they might also be less effective, like the guns might be weaker, but it's going to be harder for somebody to see them. So for a stealth profile, maybe that's what you need. Another one you might consider is your CPU, the brains of your ship, your avionics packages. You can upgrade these, but again, at the cost of space and power and other things. You could get a longer radar range so you can see things further away. You can identify things faster. You can have better AI systems that help you, for example, aim your Class 2 turrets so you don't have to do it manually. But again, all of these things have trade-offs. The next thing to consider is the cost and availability. Not every part is available in every system in the universe, and some are more expensive, but also more efficient. They use less power and produce a better result for you. Another thing to consider is that you will be able to tune these parts after you buy them. Think of it and compare it to overclocking your CPU on your computer. Every Intel chip comes with a certain rating. It can perform this fast and it will produce this much heat and it's under tolerances, right? But in Star Citizen, when you get a part, maybe a weapon, for example, it's supposed to perform and be able to fire this fast within this tolerance. But some parts can perform better than their stated tolerance, and you can go in and tweak it and overclock it and make it work a little bit better, but at the cost of potentially damaging the part if you do it wrong, or maybe having it break down in combat. So there are, again, trade-offs to be made here. Do you want to spend the time tuning and maybe the expense of going through a few parts before you find one that can perform 20% better than factory standard? Or do you just want to grab one and take it with you and go? These are going to be options that you can weigh, and neither of them is going to be significantly advantaged or disadvantaged. There are going to be good trade-offs here. For example, an overclocked weapon, if done properly, will probably have very little chance of actually breaking down in combat. In addition, it'll provide a faster rate of fire, but it will produce more heat and probably require extra power, even if tuned properly, just like a real CPU would, for example. Now let's put it all together and take a look at how these pieces all interact when you're actually flying your ship. What you're seeing on your screen here is a basic mock-up of how the pipes system works. This is a system that simulates all the different components of your ship talking to each other, so that if any part of your ship sustains damage, either through internal overheating or durability issues, or external weapons fire hitting your ship, that if any of those parts takes damage, it reflects that damage in a realistic way. For example, if your HUD suddenly stops displaying your own shield's percentage, is that because the info pipe, the wires taking the information from your shield to your HUD, was damaged? Or is your shield actually at 0%? That kind of thing is going to create some emergent gameplay. You now have to make some decisions based on information you don't know. So if your radar takes a hit, maybe it will be displaying things, not exactly according to reality, or maybe it's going in and out. Your weapons might wind up producing more heat that's not being properly vented because the cooler or the heat pipe is taking a hit. There are many different ways that this interaction could create some very interesting moments within the game where you have to make some decisions trying to figure this out. And I expect that we'll also have some kind of damage control system that we can, again, put into our ship at the cost of some other piece not being there, in order to guarantee or harden these systems against damage, or provide backups so that if the first ones fail, you'll have a backup system that boots up after 5 or 10 seconds for any of these situations. In conclusion, I'd like to point out that the article that I got most of this information from made clear multiple times that you will not have to spend hours and hours tweaking and customizing your ship, but those that want to can have a lot of fun doing it. But again, it's about trade-offs. If you buy a bunch of stock parts and put them on your ship in a way that you think makes sense, you're not going to be at a severe disadvantage compared to somebody who spent a lot of time and money trying to tweak their ship to get exactly the right trade-off they want. The min-maxers are going to have advantages, but they're also going to have trade-offs and disadvantages to go along with those. Alright guys, thanks for watching or listening to Alpha Bootcamp. I've got some links down here at the bottom if you're watching the video. If you're listening to the audio, you can go to talesofcitizens.com and click on the show notes, and you'll find links to the articles that we took most of this information from. And again, keep in mind, we'll be putting out a lot more of these Alpha Bootcamp videos, and they will coincide with a Tales of Citizens podcast episode about the subject in question, delving much deeper into it and speculating and coming up with questions that couldn't be answered in this short episode. I'm Bridger, signing off. Thanks guys for watching. We'll see you in the verse.